Welcome to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. I am your host, Chad Hufford, and this is the podcast where we celebrate the unsung heroes of the working world. Each week, we dive into the incredible stories of honest, hardworking folks who have found financial success through grit, determination, and good old-fashioned elbow grease. So if you're ready to be inspired and learn how to turn your hard work into your own success story, you're in the right place. This is the Blue Collar Millionaire Show.
All right, we're back on the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. I had a question for you today, Chad, and this is one that I get quite a bit. People come in and they'll ask, so what do you guys do for, what kind of special investments do you guys use? What kind of investments do you guys, have that makes you guys special aside from everybody else?
What's funny about that is it's almost like, I don't care what's worked in the past, what might work next. I mean, it's kind of like coming to a personal trainer and being like, what can you offer me other than working out and eating healthier to help me get in shape?
Right. It's like,
So the focus very much is, and if people listening, if you ask this question, what is the new investment, or how's your mutual fund or your investment going to be better than last? People ask that a lot. So we're not beating people up that have asked that question, but the focus is so much on the investment rather than on the investor. And so the blue collar millionaires we work with, both on an investing level and on a professional level, understand that the tool is only as good as the person operating it.
Sure.
So you've seen some probably horrendous examples of tools being misused back in your former life teaching welding.
Right. Oh, I've seen some pretty bad stuff with the welding machine.
And you've actually had some life-threatening situations.
Lots of times, and not just with welding equipment, but just moving things around. But yeah, operation of tools being used improperly it's a huge problem.
And I think the tendency is, to try to make those tools safer rather than instructing the individual to perform better. And we've always told people, Greg, this. Yeah, we try to help people find the right investments for what they're trying to build, but more importantly, trying to help them become better investors. And too often people are in search of better investments. But again, a tool is only as good as the person operating it. So it doesn't matter what piece of welding equipment you give me, I'm not going to do an effective job welding because I don't have the skill set. I need to be trained. I need to be taught how to weld. I mean, if you give me a torch, I'm just going to burn stuff with it. I like fire, but the torch is not a bad tool, but it can cause a lot of destruction when used improperly. And we see that all the time where investors are misusing or misappropriating a tool and at best not getting the results from it. At worst, they're actually causing damage. And just to use another fitness analogy, I've heard this so many times. Somebody goes in the gym and they hurt themselves doing squats. They're like, squats hurt my back, I'm not going to do them anymore. And then you watch them doing it and it's just an atrocity of human movement. Are you squatting or what is happening? I've seen people squat where it looks like a partial, paraplegic frog trying to jump while being electrocuted or something. It's that's not a natural movement at all.
The key to the squat is you're supposed to do it with a fast twitching, jerking motion.
Yeah, all leaning to one side. And you're just it's no wonder this person gets hurt. But then we blame the squat rack. And again, that happens, I think, a lot with investing. So there's a world of difference between an investing performance or investment performance and investor performance. One is what the tool is capable of. And granted, you want to have the right tools. There are limitations to tools, but so often the focus is just on the tool and we miss the investor performance completely. So that is a huge part of what we try to do at Veritas, is to make sure the investor performance, the investor behavior is appropriate, because only then can they get the most out of their tool. Again, it doesn't matter if you're welding, if you're an electrician, if you're working out. We work with a lot of law enforcement. You and I both enjoy guns. We love to shoot. I was at a gun course years ago, and there was two individuals who will remain nameless, who were bumbling and fumbling with their weapons, and just it was malfunction after malfunction. They weren't hitting shots, and both of them had beautiful Wilson 1911s, like $4,000 pistols. It's a lot of money. I was going to say invest in a gun. Guns aren't investments. That's another conversation for another time. But
do that one.
But the tool was, I mean, if you've shot a Wilson 1911, then you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, don't, because you don't want to know what you're missing, or you don't want to know what you are missing, because then whatever pistol you shoot just won't seem what it could. But the point, we actually looked at one of the guys that I was with, and we were watching this happening. I was like, this is hardly a Wilson commercial. But again, the tendency is to look, okay, what's wrong with the gun? Why isn't it doing what it's supposed to do? And we try to solve that problem. So maybe we try a different brand, we try a different ammo. And again, sometimes it is those things, but it's usually the behavior of the individual.
I'm reminded of, I think it was in 2004, I read the case study on it. There was an Air France airplane that had crashed. When I say airplane, it was, I think, an Airbus A320, a huge airplane, bunch of people on board. And essentially what Airbus had been doing is they were automating their system so much to try to take the pilot out of the airplane. And the airplane had some problems where those automation features didn't work anymore. And the pilot no longer knew how to fly the airplane. So during this case study, what they found is that they needed to train the pilots in order to know how to fly when things got weird. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about. We need to be training our investors on how to fly this ship
in the midst of turbulence.
Yeah.
Well, and that's part of the thing too, is if we get used to coasting when everything's going well, and if we have a few years in a row where the economy is good, investment returns are double digits, or at least positive many years in a row, then when you do hit a storm and panic sets in, you forget how to act. And that's a perfect metaphor, because that is what's happening. People kind of get used to autopilot, and then a storm hits, or somebody on the news says there's a storm coming.
Right.
And fear and anxiety start coming in. And then you get somebody who might, under normal conditions, be able to operate that aircraft or operate that tool, but now they're stressed out and panic comes in. So it's really inoculating people, not just helping them use that tool well, but inoculating them to use that tool well, even under pressure. And yeah, I didn't know you were going to use that metaphor, but that picture, that word story, but it's perfect, because we can get complacent in our investments, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the tool, but we just still have to use that tool under difficult circumstances. Another thing that investors often get wrong, I think, is overly focus on return rate and ignoring savings rate. Mm-hmm. And even if you got a great investment and you're not trying to time it. So let's just talk about some of the ways that people can misuse an investment. One is timing the market. We always tell people time in your investment is more important than timing your investment, assuming that investment is a suitable tool for what you're trying to build. But they're moving in and out of it. And going back to that, I guess, is it suitable? So it's, if you're trying to put up drywall with a sledgehammer, it's not going to work very well. Hey. You needed the right tool for the job. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your sledgehammer. It's just you're not going to get the right result. So I think it's making sure that you have the right tool for the job, and you're not trying to time it. You've got the right tool. You're committing to it through thick and thin. So those are some of the ways that we see people hurting themselves with their tools, is they either have the wrong tool, or when the going gets tough, they don't want to use the tool. It's like when your muscles start to hurt, that's when you want to get off the treadmill, and Muhammad Ali didn't used to count his reps until it started to hurt, because those are the only ones that counted. So some interviewer one time, back in it was, I think shortly after he beat George Foreman, asked him how many push-ups and sit-ups he did. And he said he has no idea. He only counts the ones that hurt, because those are the only ones that matter. But that's kind of that idea, right? Like what you do when investing hurts, what you do when maybe your own personal budget hurts a little bit. Like those are the reps that matter the most. So those are some of the mistakes that we often see people make, misusing their investment. But the other one, just simply underusing them, not using them wrong, but underusing them. And maybe they go to the gym, they have great form, but they work out once a month, whether they need to or not, or they work out, the first 7 days of January, then that's it. Right. We see that as well.
Oh, definitely.
Where, yeah, you might have a perfectly good investment. You don't panic out, but you simply aren't saving enough. And the blue collar millionaires that we work with, they didn't necessarily have the best investments. They had the right type of investments for what they were trying to build. Long-term growth-oriented investments. They weathered the storms, but they used them consistently. They didn't stop when people on the news said market storms were coming. They were able to make cuts in other areas of their lives to continue funding that investment. So even when the budget was tight, they still committed to saving.
So we have this paradigm here of where we have the investment type and how we are investing, the behavior piece. Does one matter more?
That's a really good question. I mean, you have to have the right tool, right? It doesn't matter how good of a shot you are. If your barrel is bent, like you're not going to hit what you're shooting. If you could be the best driver in the world, you have broken down parts, it's not going to work. And if your torch is leaking acetylene when you're trying to weld, like problems are going to happen.
Right.
So I think you have to have an acceptable tool. It doesn't mean the best tool, because, by the way, there's no such thing as the best investment, right? But it has to be an acceptable tool. It has to fit the job you're trying to create. You can't have fixed income investments, bring those into a rising cost world and expect things not to go wrong. So the majority, if you're looking for long-term growth and a growing income in retirement or in financial independence, you have to have more growth-oriented investments. So that I think that has to be the foundation, but then utilizing that tool correctly. Doesn't need the best tool, but it has to be a tool designed for the job.
And that's certainly what we do as well, as we help people essentially guide them into picking the best tool.
The right tool.
The right tool. Yeah, correct. Yeah, you caught me on that one. Not necessarily the best, but the right tool for the job. And then we guide them with that investor behavior for long-term planning.
And that's why what we do is, I think, so critical, because it is hard. You do have to make adjustments, and it isn't just, if it was just picking the right investment and then everything takes care of itself, but it's the long-term building process, and storms do come and life throws curveballs, and it's being able to stay accountable to a blueprint. Here's what we're trying to build. Here's the tools and materials that we decided were appropriate for this build. Has the build changed? Has the long-term goal changed? If not, we need to continue to stick with the right tools. That doesn't mean we don't reevaluate. Maybe there is a refinement or a tool that might work a little bit better. We just had, for some of our employees with the state, they just announced a couple new investments. So we'll have to look, okay, now that's available. So we're always going to be looking for potential, but our focus is always going to be on the individual.
What do you say to the person that's gone to somebody and said, like, hey, but this other place has the silver bullet? This is the investment here. This is going to do it.
If you're not becoming a better investor, even if this new company or this new investment is in fact better, if the person doesn't fundamentally become a better investor, it won't make a difference. Just like if you're switching gyms because the new gym has a faster treadmill, which is easily verifiable. So that's easier to figure out. Like, okay, this gym has a faster treadmill. I'm going to switch gyms because of it. You look at their history, like, well, you've checked into this old gym 3 times in the last 12 months. Yeah, I don't think the treadmill is the problem. So that would be my caution to somebody. And who will hold you accountable? So let's say that's true, that investment is better. How are you going to become a better investor in the process? And who's going to hold you accountable? And it's not necessarily a fun conversation, because we all want to believe that we're going to stick with it. We make the New Year's resolutions. We all want to believe that, this next year is going to be the best year, that new me, new year, but it often doesn't work that way. And we often try to fix things with more of what is not working. As because my daughter works here. So Braylon, she just started driving. She's 16. She's going to take her test here in a few weeks. And she's overall done pretty well. A couple minor traffic infractions. She hasn't run anybody over in a long time. We're not going, if she struggles driving, like if she's clipping mailboxes and light poles on the way home, the fix is not more horsepower, is not to give her a faster car, because all that's going to do is create a higher speed collision. But so often in investing, that's exactly what we do. We're not getting good results with whatever investment strategy we have. And we just want a bigger, faster investment, maybe more potential return, which also might mean more risk. But we're switching out the wrong variable. And again, I don't mean that we don't look very closely at the tool. That's one of the things that we take people through, is a deep dive of what is their current investment strategy. But it's looking at in light of, what are they trying to build? Is this a suitable tool or not? If the answer is yes, then we look at, what is the behavior? And again, to answer your question again, to go back to that, like you have to have the right tool, but the human behavior is, I think, the next most critical factor. So, and part of that behavior is choosing the right investment. And I guess the encouragement I want to give people is, like, your behavior, your choices, what you do, your habits are the biggest determining factors to your financial success. You might have the right education, you might not have the best benefits, the big 401k match. All those things help, but your behaviors as an investor, your financial behavior, that is the critical variable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So all these different pieces are all the different tools in the toolbox that we get to utilize. Makes sense.
Everybody also needs to have their own personal blueprint. So if we kind of go back to that metaphor of building something, you have to have the right tools. You also have the right plan. And like we've talked about other times on this show, we're not just trying to collect investments. We want our long-term goals, what we're building, to dictate. So the blueprint, the financial plan, dictates the type of tool. But that's kind of the easy part. Like, that's what a lot of people come to us for. Like,
right,
help me identify what it is I'm trying to build and what do I need to do to get there. But the hard part is holding people accountable to that, because it is a scary world. It does get difficult. There's fears and anxiety inducing things. There's a lot of uncertainties out there that can get people off track. There's also a lot of distractions, that, like we kind of talked about, the next greatest thing, like some other investment offers more return, or look at what your favorite cryptocurrency did, or what, it's just really easy to get distracted.
In your experience, and I think this will really drive home the point, for the blue collar millionaires that you've had and experienced and grown to know through your practice, is it the faster car, or is it knowing how to drive really well in the wintertime in Alaska type thing?
Exactly. And it's the second. So yeah, if you have all-wheel drive and good tires, all that helps. But if you took somebody from Florida who's never seen snow, you can give them a car with traction control, great tires, all those different things, and it's going to be probably a really stressful day for that individual.
Tricky winter, that's for sure.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because it's kind of, right now as we're recording, it's September and snow is coming soon. But inevitably when it comes, there's going to be a lot of Alaskans that have acted like they've never seen snow before.
No.
You see people in the ditch, they're going 20 miles an hour, and then there's somebody going 90.
Right.
Because they've got four-wheel drive, and nobody told them that four-wheel drive doesn't help you stop. And it's just this chaos. But it's the same thing in investments. It's people have not learned how to drive. So when the snow hits, when the storm hits, people go bonkers. They freak out. And they take a perfectly good investing vehicle and they wrap it around a metaphorical light pole. And it's not the vehicle's fault. Again, there are times where people simply do not have the appropriate investments for what they're trying to build. But if we ignore the driver, it's just like taking somebody who's never seen snow that wrapped their all-wheel drive car around a light pole and saying, well, maybe we need bigger tires, and then getting them a new car, but never teaching them how to drive in snow.
Right. Come to Veritas. We'll teach you how to drive in the snow. I mean,
well, and that's the thing. The storms will come. And, to stay on that, if we're going to stay on that metaphor, it's not to try to miss the storms. Mm-hmm. You can't.
Like,
yeah. And here in Alaska, like you're not going to outdrive the storm. Like the whole state's got snow. You're not going to miss the storm. You have to learn how to drive. You have to weather the storm. So you need the right equipment. You need to have the right tools, but you have to be a better investor. You have to be a better operator of those investments. And that's what we're committed to do.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Chad. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. We hope this episode has been inspiring and beneficial to you. If you want help on your journey to financial freedom, reach out to us at veritasalaska.com. We'd love to sit down over a cup of coffee with you, either here in our office or virtually, and get to know you and your needs. And though this podcast is free of charge, we do ask that you please do us two quick favors. If you enjoyed the episode, give our pod a great rating on iTunes or whatever podcast platform you use, and also give us a follow on Instagram. We hope you have a wonderful day filled with gratitude and intentionality. God bless.
The information expressed is for general information only and is not intended to provide specific investment advice or recommendations for any individual. It is suggested that you consult your financial professional, attorney, or tax advisor with regard to your individual situation. Hypothetical investment results are for illustrative purposes only and should not be deemed a representation of future results.